Collections Consultation hearing report. That was quite impressive. So we'll just do a tiny bit of housekeeping first, and then we'll get on with hearing from people. So first of all, we have apologies. Now, I have apologies from Tony Fox, Murray McLean, Terry Walker and Gary Gotling. And I'd like to say that every councillor gets all the written submissions and reads them, and this is recorded, and the fact that they're apologies doesn't mean that they won't hear what's happening. And then, are there any conflicts of interest? Oh, I need a mover for the apologies. John, yes. Robin, thank you. Any conflicts of interest? No. And we need to move that we receive the hearings report. Yep. And so that's moved by Robin, seconded by Mark.
Oh, okay.
Oh, right, seconded by Mayor Sandra. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Right. So everyone's got 5 minutes with 1 minute for questions. We'll keep to that time because I think that's really fair. I'll use Christian names with respect rather than surnames, if that's all right with people, and on we go. So from Helen, I think is online. I saw her come up before. So Helen McCabe, welcome, and you've got the floor.
Hello.
Hello, Helen. Yes, we can hear and see you. Good to see you.
Oh, great. Oh, good. Okay, it's all working. Great. Thank you. So I'm representing Whangamata Resource Recovery Trust in Whangamata, and we did the submission form. In the state it's not really clear. It's not easy to give a clear answer because there are factors that might be in or out. So it was a little bit murky in that way. It misses out information that would make a clear answer easier anyway. On our side of the hill, blue bags are hated by many, especially when they're containing food, because it's a magnet for cats and dogs and seagulls. So, you know, it's not clear whether blue bags will stay or whether they go. And of course, blue bags are a cost, but I still think that separating food waste is actually the easiest thing to start with, because the numbers at the curbside audit last year or the year before, I'm not sure, showed that food waste was over 50%, organic waste was over 50% of the bag. So there's clearly an easy way for people to take that out of the system and separate it and use it for the good of the community. And I think the good of the community means giving jobs to locals, having it locally processed so that the costs of transport are reduced, and also being able to use it for reserves, and the resulting compost being used for reserves and community use. So I think that's an easy decision to make. It's low-hanging fruit in a way, and it should be the first thing that you do, one of many waste minimisation moves that need to be addressed. It's not something we can put on the back burner again. We've got to move in all areas of waste minimisation, and I think food waste is an important one. I did attach a summary of a little local trial project we've been doing, and that's shown that the public are really into it. It's just a small trial, and it's obviously not meant for a whole town to use, but it just shows the feedback we get is overwhelmingly positive, that people want to compost and separate food waste and keep it out of the landfill, and you know, get on track to actually doing something practical. It's not just a feel good thing. There's a lot of practicalities there, and I think it's something that we should move on very quickly. So yeah, whether blue bags are in or out, it's unclear at this stage. Blue bags without food obviously are a lot easier to deal with. Given an opportunity to separate, that could make it all the easier. Then it's a user pays, because will people who compost in or out or have very little waste, will they be able to opt out because they already are practicing waste minimisation practices? So, you know, it's perhaps there should be something in there about opting in or out in retaining a user pays system. So yeah, we're in favour. It was difficult to sort of choose which option in the light of an absence of some information. So we're very pleased with our trial. We're just doing it as voluntarily. And we put it in local community composts. It's only plant food, but so plant food is pretty easy to deal with, but obviously things that like meat, dairy, bread, all those sort of things, they're not easily home composted, but they can be with the right system. You know, there are people who will go that far, but there are a lot of people who can't or won't. So I think separating at the curbside is an excellent choice.
Right. Getting close to your end of your time, Helen, so just tell us anything else.
Yep, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say, that we encourage that this will be the first of many waste minimisation moves. I'm only talking about food waste, but this can be a starter, so to speak. And I really encourage council to get on with it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Helen. Is there any questions?
Yes. Hi, Helen. Helen, you mentioned your trial that's been going on, and one of the things that came through in the submissions were that some of the people who are non-resident ratepayers, who have batches and holiday houses, wouldn't use this service. So, as somebody who has started a food collection service in a small town that has a high proportion of holiday homes, are you finding that your service is really only being used by full-time residents, or are you getting participation from the part-time residents as well?
We've got both groups participating in it. In fact, when there is a long weekend and school holidays where, the numbers of bottles left was climbing and we had to buy a few more, and then people ring me all the time because I have my number on the top of the bottle, saying how's it work. It's very, very easy for people to do. It's really just a series of swap locations around town, so people from holiday homers find it very, very convenient to do that.
Cool, lovely, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you for zooming in, and thank you for your ongoing commitment to this issue.
Thank you very much. Okay.
For a few years now.
Yes, we certainly have.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Is Pamela on? We're now going to welcome Pamela, really. We'll just give you a moment to sort your picture and your...
Kia ora koutou. Nice to see you all, and huge amount of support for Helen and the work that's going on over in Whangamata. Really, really excellent to see that. So my concerns for this with the a user pays model is that certain areas who don't have large residential populations, even allowing for holiday homes, will find that it's not economically viable and would lose out on that. And actually, I think the council should be doing a weekly food waste collection. And I would urge that could then be linked in with community gardens and local RTSs to do the processing of that, which would create jobs locally. The huge amount of food waste that goes into landfill is shocking. It's depending on what reports you read, it's between 50 to 61% of landfill is actually food, which creates methane gases, which is also a huge issue for us in the current climate crisis that we're in. Now, unless the council is planning on capturing that methane in all the landfill and using it for alternative energy sources, then I think we need to actually keep it out of the landfill rather than it going in. It also, if we're creating compost locally, that's a lot better for a lot of communities where they don't have the facilities at home. Not everybody has the luxury of being able to compost in their own environment, especially they might be renting, they might be in an apartment. It's not always feasible. So I would wholeheartedly support maybe widening Helen's trial, because I think once people start doing it, they will find it's easier. We also need to educate people for what can and can't go into which bit of the compost. And I think that's the issue with the meat scraps and the dairy. It's really hard, which is why I don't support a combined organic waste collection, because once you've got cooked food, meat scraps into organic clippings, then you can't really compost it properly. And obviously then you get all the issues with pests. So there's an awful lot, again, to Helen's point, there's an awful lot, I think, of work that needs to go into this. It's been quite a simplified question that we were asked, and it's quite a big topic. So I really would urge that we do further investigation, but I would wholeheartedly support perhaps a combination of user pays and something on the rates to make it feasible for everybody across the district. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pamela. Any questions, comments? No? Thank you so much
Awesome.
for your
Thank
time
you.
and your energy. Thank you. Now, have we got Rafael? So he's not here at the moment. Joyce? Yeah. Joyce Birdsall? Welcome. We're just jumping somebody because they're not online yet. So are you available, Joyce?
I am just unmuting. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. If you could increase your volume a little bit, if that's easy for you. No, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know quite how to do that.
No, that's fine. We can't see you. Do you want us to see you?
Okay. Now you can?
No.
Oh. I have turned the camera on. Let me just speak anyway.
Okay, that's fine. Well done. Thank you.
Okay. I'd just like to first congratulate Council on actually trying to tackle this problem, because it is a huge issue and it's something we do need to do something about. In my submission, I ticked the no box only because I think there's some real logistic problems to sort out first. And I'm hoping that this is the first of a sort of a higher level look at it that Council is doing. I echo some of the concerns that
That Helen and Pamela had.
Sorry, yeah, some of the concerns that Helen expressed about the non-resident population, and we have concerns in Taurua that bins will be left out when people leave and are on the street for a period of time, encouraging girls. I'm a great fan of composting. I certainly do it myself. I just don't know how well this is going to work on a town-wide system. The I believe there's Hamilton with the title to it. And there's also been talk of Auckland transporting material for very long distances. So we need to think about the logistics of where that material is to do and how we're going to do it. But I just want to say, although I've said no in my submission, I really do support the concept and would be very interested to see how council moves forward with it.
Right. Thank you so much, Joyce. That's really useful as an addition to your written submission. Are there any questions of Joyce? No questions. So thank you very much. You've had days of submissions. So,
I know it's got a bit busy lately. Thank you.
it's a really busy time. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, this is right. Okay. So, Shakeen, it's your turn.
Hi everyone, thank you. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the Thames Food Waste Group and the Thames Provincial Food Waste Resource Group. And we've got 4 key points to make. One is, it seems clear that central government is going down that path of putting this through. So putting this into the contract now means it's likely to be cheaper than making contract changes later on. We can already have it sitting in. That was the first point on the paper I gave you. We believe that the compost should be done locally. And of course, food waste separated and taken somewhere else is better than not separated and dumped in a landfill somewhere. But having it local, just like Udo mentioned, a few more jobs, keeping the nutrients locally and avoiding the transport. We understand that there's sufficient room in each of the RTS to accommodate a composting unit. They're not complex, they're fairly simple, concrete bay kind of thing, and we've seen it in other places, so we believe that could be a great option. And we've learned from other places, like in Christchurch, where these kind of composting facilities take industrial waste. We end up in a situation of smell and problem and so on. So generally, we need it locally. We just need to make sure that it's controlled in a way that we don't end up with large-scale fish carcasses near town, of course. And that can be designed, of course. And we believe that we should go only with the food waste caddy and not with the larger bins. That's for a few reasons. One, garden waste is already taken care of in the user pay system. People just take it or they deal with it at home. So including waste in the collection will increase the costs, but it will not remove waste from the landfill. So this is something we'll be paying for extra for no good reason. It's already cared for. And so this will mean, just using the food waste scale will mean it will be cheaper for ratepayers, and also remembering that the larger bin means more waste. So keeping it small. And the 4th point is around the general rates versus the user pays fund, which was raised. If we will put the general rubbish in the general rates, using wheelie bins, for example, and the food waste as a user pays, we're pretty much telling people, put your food waste in your general rubbish. Otherwise, you're going to pay more for it. That doesn't make sense. It's a negative incentive. We need to do the opposite. We need to maintain a user pays general rubbish and have a general rates food waste collection, which creates the perfect incentive for people to separate and use the new system. And based on the waste audits that we had, we know that people spend annually around $250 every year just on rubbish. We know that more than half of it is food waste. So there's already on average per household in Thames, more than $100 already available to go towards that scheme. So Yeah, these are the main ones.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments? No? So succinct. Want to acknowledge all of the submitters' hard work, but no, because you come from my local town, I know how hard you and your team work. So thank you for your commitment and your contribution.
Thank you.
Anything else? Right. Just for people's own record, as we go through, Cameron Fleming from the Otamu Ratepayers Association won't be presenting, and Winnie Lenehan won't be presenting. And we're still trying to find Raquel and Robin. And so that takes us to you, Sir Peter. So thank you for arriving early from Whitianga, I think.
I've moved to Thames, yesterday in Coromandel, where John comes from. Hi, John.
Hi.
Welcome to Thames.
Thank you. I would like to commend the council for tackling this issue. It is a complex one, and it's one where there are room for many mistakes. I have first started making compost 75 years ago, so I admit I've still got a little bit to learn. I haven't been involved in making it with machinery. So in other words, a compost yard containing at least 2,000 cubic metres. And so I understand the issues that if one doesn't do the job properly, one can finish up with a large pile of rotting organic matter. Composting is an art and it's a business, and it has to be done properly, and the sites need to be chosen very carefully, because there will be times when there will be smells emitted from it that will upset people in dwellings. And so to do this on a large scale, the infrastructure needs to be looked at very carefully. One needs to look at all the composting efforts that are going on around the North Island, at least, to see what they're doing. I had a lot of them come to me when I was composting on a larger scale behind the Wakatu Freezing Works to get ideas. I've always worked on a shoestring, a rather well-worn shoestring at that, in most cases, and to have all the toys, all the equipment, and a really well set up site makes a big difference to cleanliness and tidiness. And when you're dealing with this sort of range of compost and burning from the backyard compost upwards, vermin are a big issue. And so that needs to be cared for. But looking at all that, the most viable option to me for dealing with organic waste, domestic organic waste, is education and encouraging and educating people how to manage waste on their own property. It saves the transport of carting it away, of processing it, and then selling it and marketing it, and then transporting it back to the purchaser. So on the domestic scale, one has various ranges of worm farms, bokashi buckets, compost bins, and the compost bin is much more than just piling the kitchen waste into a container. It needs to be mixed with the right other ingredients to make it work so that it doesn't become a public nuisance or a enabling nuisance. Yeah, I've been at it a long time. I know, and I've just moved to Thames, and the first thing I did was get my composting system set up. And because it's a really, really valuable resource. It's also important, as the council has now sort of got onto the climate change issue. The climate change issue, from my point of view, is largely about having the right amount of humus or organic carbon as humus in the soil that is capable of buffering, cleaning, and holding water to stop the excesses of flooding and drought. I have a plan that, if implemented, count this catchment by catchment, I could fix the climate change issue in 10 years. I've seen it in very small scales in various places. I know it can be done. I've done it. And but that's only part of the issue we're addressing here today, but it is a part.
Yeah.
And so I would like to commend the council for tackling this problem. There are many, many questions that have to be dealt with along the way. I appreciate that, having been there and done that. And I stand ready to assist in any way I can further down the line.
Thank you.
I realise from the breadth of this subject that there's a lot of things that I haven't covered. With 5 minutes, when I stand ready to answer questions, and that gives it much more focus into what people are interested in.
Thank you so much, Peter. Martin.
So I have a question. So do you see how we could have the sort of larger scale, so like a Thames type one at the RTS, but also in smaller communities have like a pottle type thing? Can you see them both working, or do you think, sort of in your experience, that you need to concentrate on the larger operations?
The larger the operation, the bigger the trouble you get into when you get it wrong.
Right.
So, and the more you go into local community working, providing you don't go overboard with machinery and plant, the less cartage you have to do. It's good to have things recycled within the community on the smallest scale as possible. The home garden being, or the lifestyle block, or the farm is the ideal, but there are a number of people in our community who have different interests other than what we're discussing at the moment, and they all need to be catered for. When the total volume of rubbish, of organic rubbish, like kitchen waste, amounts to 56%, is recorded. That is a considerable amount, and it does require serious consideration. So I would recommend that small communities have smaller plants, but they need to be well set up, well placed, and the same diligence needs to be exercised in every plant. What I haven't mentioned before was access to water and drainage, because compost, as I say, is an art. It's quite technically precise.
Yep.
We are creating a home for a wide range of biology to digest, and so it's a biological digestion process, not just a what you might call a rotting process. And this needs to be done aerobically. Anaerobia equals disease. and pathogens and aerobia. Those organisms are capable of digesting disease organisms. So it's really important to get this process right. And when you're dealing with it on such a large scale, you haven't got much time for experimentation. So look, do due diligence, and I stand ready to assist in detail wherever. But,
Thank you.
yeah, to answer your question, small scale if you can, from the garden to the local community, anything that can't be dealt with at that level, then on a larger scale.
Thank you.
Right, thanks. You've got one more question.
Yes, a question, Peter. So you touched on it in your verbal submission. In your written submission, you talked about people needing clear instructions on how to compost.
Yes, education.
Education. Do you see that education as being council's responsibility, or would you prefer council to have a role in advocating for that education to happen?
That is a question that needs to be discussed.
Yes.
And the last fall is that, and it has been done in Tauranga, where they assisted or financed an education officer to deal with this issue. When you're dealing with it on a greater community basis, if you have somebody that you know can do this job well and bring enthusiasm to people, because people do things when they're enthusiastic. When they're not enthusiastic, they don't get done. It's the question where it needs to be done well. They need to be able to call on the person if they have a glitch and get it sorted quickly.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. Thanks for your time and your expertise. And we've heard your offer of continued engagement as we work through this issue. So thank you.
One needs a reason to get up every morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye.
Ashley. Hello.
You should go.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so I'm here today to say that I am for the organic waste collection. As a family or a household of 5, we compost all our organic waste. But a huge percent of our population do not take such steps. So many of my fellow families within our community throw their organic waste into the rubbish bins, and it is soul destroying stuff. So from our household perspective, we produce approximately 5 litres of about 5 litres of uncompacted organics a day. Now that would be 35 litres of organic waste a week. If we were putting that into our blue bag, it would be half of a blue bag a week. And that's not steps I'm willing to take, but so much of our population do. Like, this is a huge volume of waste that is ending up in our dump pits. Organic waste and dump pits is not the future answer to waste management. So that's what I'm going to say.
Right, you said it with passion, so thank you.
So, Peter before, I think, said about passionate people here to make the changes, right? Like,
Yes.
if you're passionate about it, you are going to do something.
Yeah.
So having a system there for people that are not passionate is what is going to be required Because if you are not passionate for it, you're not going to have a composting system in your backyard. You are just not. So the steps that they take is putting it into their blue bags. And then you end up with a whole lot of the rat infestations, all of those problems that he was talking about that you'll get at your organic waste sites. That's already happening. That is already happening at our dump collection sites, at our Turahia pit, which is nearly at full capacity. I mean, within my submission, I stated or rated that option 2 was my number 1. Within regards to that, that would mean 140 litres of mixed green and food waste. I put that because I felt that you would get greater population buy-in regarding that, because yes, people mow their lawns, yes, they have green waste from their gardens that they have to take to our dump sites and pay as a user. We've already had really, really great information regarding that if you're already getting them to pay for that themselves, continue doing that. That whole problem of green waste is already being dealt with within reason. You actually probably get a big percentage of your population that throw that in their blue bag as well, to be honest. But a service of the option 1, the organic waste, that's the main key, and that is the change that needs to happen. The ultimate goal should be to reduce the total volume of waste collection. So I'm not talking about organic waste, we're talking about overall waste. People need to consume less waste. So we need to ask ourselves, does an organic waste collection allow for this? What an organic waste collection does allow is a more defined pathway for organic matter to ultimately end up in a closed loop system, allowing for those microbes and matter to be returned to our community gardens, to our earth beds, not to dump pits. Some ideas that I did just want to throw around is about public education. If you were going to implement anything around organic waste collection, there needs to be public education regarding it. There has already been so much drive and push from our council, from many councils, around trying to get public education out there around how to compost at home. These steps are not working. They haven't worked. I don't know how many councils I have lived in, 3 at least, to name a few, that have tried different education tips or giving you money to have composting devices in your house, or subsidising costs of composting systems. People don't uptake these things.
Getting close to your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I had some ideas around community composting hubs, and then the great work of the 3T group flowed out a whole lot of this composting or organic waste collection systems. But Peter did just not mention that the smaller scale systems is where perhaps you'll end up with less problems. So are community composting hubs the answer to that? Well, I do know that even just my composting within our own backyard does enhance our rat infestation, and we have our own issues with battling and trapping and all that, right? An idea around bokashi collection systems, which is an anaerobic system. Can we have that at the gate, and then it goes into an aerobic system within bigger picture. Where do we intend to get the carbon matter to be able to compost this large volume of organic waste effectively? Over the summer, we have an increased population, especially here on the Coromandel. We also have increasing temperatures. Your food waste breaks down and ferments and things faster. So is there ideas being put out that an organic waste collection for that to occur more frequently over that summer period? Those were just a few things that I thought were worth rolling out into this space.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Hi, Ashley. Yes, I have a question, and I've jumped in before Martin very rudely. So you talked about a local closed loop system, and Peter talked about that as well. Would the curbside collection be as an attractive option if we were shipping it somewhere else for processing?
For your less passionate folk, yes.
Cool.
I think that's how you get buy-in.
All right.
Martin?
So, yeah, I note your point about often councils will put ads in the newspaper, have something on Facebook, even give people a small scale compost bin, and then, it's on to the next thing. So do you think to make it work, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you would actually need to be having some local compost heroes, whether they're volunteers or whether it's a paid person, to then go in and support people once they got the bin or got the system going? So it's a very long question.
Look, any form of education has to go alongside this. For myself, we have 3 children that attend early childhood in schools. There's a great avenue for education. Those students that are already within there are knowing how to compost and knowing how to worm farm. They're already taking these steps. So if you've got more things happening in a wider aspect within our community, then that's a great place to feed that education back out through the community. Yeah, honestly, any form of education that can go with it.
Yep.
How do you get public engagement? I mean, what do you think? Honestly.
Jealous.
But having the organic waste end up in our rubbish bin is not okay. It's not okay. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah. Yes. Right, just for people's records, we've had a couple of other people not coming, and that's Mr. Wilson and Michelle Mason-Smith. They've withdrawn, but obviously they've done their oral submission, so
The verbal.
they're written, so that's covered. So that leads us to Joanna Hamilton. Thank you so much for being here early.
You're welcome. Actually, it's a really good segue, actually, because I'm an educator.
Ah, cool.
So, actually, we're talking about everything. So I don't know if 5 minutes is going to be enough, but I'll do my best.
Yes, go for it. We're very good at hearing people speaking quickly. We're very clever and we absorb it all.
Cool. Okay. Before I introduce myself, I just want to point out that this is nothing new. Lots of other communities and countries have done this before us. They have education programs in place. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Lots of places in New Zealand, Hamilton, Ruapehu, Wellington, Raglan, they're just a couple that I know of that we can go and visit. We have people in our communities who have been involved with these programs and they can advise us or advise you. Okay, so my name is Joanna. I currently serve my community as a teacher at Mercury Bay Area School. I have a background in food marketing, food management. I have owned my own catering business. I write for the Informer. I'm on the committee of the Mercury Bay Resource Recovery Centre. I teach hospitality, nutrition, business, and garden to table. This character here, Dylan, year 10, that's form 4 for some of you guys. He's,
Oh, we've caught on, we know year 10 is.
as you can see, little fella. I've been teaching him since February, a couple of times a week, so not a lot. He needs a little bit more attention, and so he's engaged really well with our garden to table program. So I have him for an additional couple of hours a week, and we're focusing on composting because he thinks that might be a career option for him. Last week I got him to go through all the submissions. He was delighted to see how many people he knew there, which is, he found his mum, couldn't believe it. Went and asked her why, how she'd put a submission in. He'd never known her to be community engaged before. They had a really nice conversation. As you can see, he's gone through and he's highlighted, he's ticked all the yeses, he's crossed all the no's, but then he's gone through and highlighted all the no's where they're not actually no's. So he would love to be here. He wouldn't be confident enough to talk to a room. Yeah. Once upon a time, I would have been able to throw him in the car and bring him over, but now that's 10 weeks advanced planning, extra hours, and you don't want to be in a car alone with a child. Protect yourself and then. But that's another conversation. Okay, so he's given me permission to talk on his behalf. He's not a very mature child. He's not well educated, but this is what he picked up. The first thing he noticed was the fours outweighed the against. And hold on, he's got to finish here. Bear with me. It was like 600 and something to. Sorry, I worked on this last night.
Don't worry about it.
You've got an algorithm to find that.
Yeah, someone will find that out, but what we're picking up is that there's more eyes.
It was like 600 to 70.
Yeah.
And actually it would be more than that, 170. The next thing he noticed, he was very concerned about the format of the survey. He quickly realised that there were a lot of blank forms coming through. So he's highlighted those for you. And he was concerned that their viewpoint was not captured. He recognised a few names and he knows that they're quite vocal, so he was a bit concerned that they didn't get a voice. It only took him to get through halfway through the first page to realise that a lot of the no's were actually saying no because they've already composted, and they also recommended other alternatives like worm farms, education programs, community collection points. So, here it is. So 67 were blatant and adamant no's. And in his words, he said, you know, they just need some education and to be less selfish. He himself had no idea or interest prior to February. So it is possible. We started discussing solutions. And he suggested that actually there's a lot of different people and a lot of different ways of doing things. Perhaps we needed a multi-system. This is his word, not me. So I was pretty happy with that. He suggested community collection points like at the schools or the play centres, and thought that might be good for educating people as well. And found a company called Why Waste, I think it is, which is a worm farm subscription company. He got really excited about that because he was like, I could be a technician. He suggested that food collection by waste contractors was definitely an option, and he was aware of Hamilton, for example. He suggested maybe commercial collection points at supermarkets or warehouse, things like that. He pointed out that people needed to be become aware and be educated. And I suggested that, like all good things, they start small. I had just been, my mum had forwarded me a RNZ article, which I can give you a link to, of the Wellington trial that has been successful. And then we talked about perhaps growing that as a community, because we've got lots of different communities on the Coromandel, and what suited each community the best and in season. We talked about a 10-year plan and growing along with the plan, because things will change. What might seem will work now might not work in 10 years. He got really excited about we could recycle plastics for the bins. He cut and pasted all the no comments onto a page, which I haven't printed out, I'm afraid. But he particularly liked, and we talked about one person's comment about continued education, monitoring, and possibly enforcement. We talked about what would that look like. We touched on funding, and because of my small and recent involvement with the Mercury Bay Resource Recovery Centre, and I attended a Wastemen's conference last year. I know that there is funding from the government for waste minimisation funds. As I said, the government sent clear messages to local councils that this is something that needs to happen or is going to happen. And we talked about cost recovery, you know, the reduction of blue bags, the reduction of the weight of the waste to landfill. Another exercise I do with my year 7 and 8s is we do an audit on the rubbish bin outside their classroom. So we've got a blue wheelie bin. We have a tarp on the ground that live, that I come in and throw the rubbish on the ground, and it hooks their attention, and then we split it into plastics and organics, and then we use it as an exercise to learn about measurement and weight, and then we look at volume, and we use it as that kind of exercise. It was, I think I've got pieces there a little bit.
Getting close to time. So
Yeah,
just
I think I've just about got there. Anyway, if Dylan can see that this is something that needs to happen, that our community is saying needs to happen, and people have done before, and someone like him who's never been interested in it before and doesn't know much about it can do it, then I think that it is something optimistically that can be implemented. That's it.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
I'm trying not to be facetious, but is Dylan available for employment?
A hard little worker. Yes, I think he'd love to have a job. He'd love to be out of school, I think. Yeah. Although he's beginning to get a bit more interested.
Yeah.
Robin.
Apologies for the repeat of the question, but I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Peter in terms of where do you see the responsibility for that education coming from? Is it, is it council's responsibility to then run that education, or are we best placed to be supporting people like yourselves and other people in the community in that waste education?
You need both. You can't do it without grassroots, and those grassroots are like people like us and you that have had to get a day unpaid leave to drive over and deliver the message, and organise their own family. So if you look at places like Raglan and Hamilton and Wellington, they all have education programs funded by the council, which support the grassroots operations.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you. So just thank you so much for your time to acknowledge that and for all the signatures. And also could you, on our behalf, thank Dylan. Thank you for his contribution. Tell him he's the youngest person that I know that is submitted. It could well be more in the written, but thank him and tell him that from me that the interesting thing about this process is how a lot of people have talked about us and we instead of council being separate. And so that really interests me how much as parts of the community embrace this as a we problem and not as a council problem. And that intrigues me that he's obviously one of those people. So thank you.
There are some more people on the submissions that acknowledge that we all need to be more responsible for our waste, but this is a starting point, and it's also something that can be see results really quickly, and people can feel really proud of really quickly, yes. And they feel that they are doing something.
Yes.
And I think if you can listen to the RNZ article on your way home in the car, you'll hear that that was one of the positive benefits from the Wellington trial program as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Karen Donald is online. Welcome, Karen. I know you've been there for some time listening, so it's your turn.
Hello.
Hello, Karen.
Hi.
Oh, that's Beverly. Hello, Beverly. We just it's just told.
Oh, I don't. Oh, I don't mind if Beverly wants to go first.
Oh, it's Beverly's picture. She's on mute.
Oh, right. Okay.
But Karen is talking.
Right. Okay. So Beverly, just so that you know my average intelligence, I don't get confused. Could you just turn your camera off so I can concentrate on the presenter just for now, and then we'll have you. Thank you so much. Perfect. Karen?
Yes?
Welcome.
Can you see me or do you need my camera on?
We can hear you clearly. If you want your camera on, turn it on. If you don't, go. Don't fret it. Don't worry about it.
Hi.
Hello, Karen.
Hi there. Kia ora.
Hi.
Ko Karen Donald takuingoa, ko Tainui Te Waka, ko Ngāti Maniapoto Te Iwi, ko Ngāti Nutunuta Hapu. My name's Karen Donald. I was born and bred in Taupō. We've had family land in the Coromandel region for many, many years. For the past 17 years, my husband and I have owned land that the Tens Coromandel District Council has classified as a significant natural area at 845A Tairua Whirianga Road in Whenuakiri. We've always been actively involved in environmental activities to help slant councils' efforts in our Taupō community that I've been more involved with. For environmental sustainability. We've been involved with Riverbank Watchdog, looking at sewage treatment plant and disposal instead of the Waikato River, riverbank plantings and scenic reserves, and what goes on scenic reserves as far as entertainment and what have you. My children have always followed this. And if we're looking at future-proofing sustainability, I've encouraged this. I've been a midwife for 28 years, a remote rural midwife. 21 of those were employed by Tū Wharetoa as their midwife. And I've been about 7 years in the Waikato Coromandel remote rural area. I answered no to curbside as a mandatory. I found it very hard to answer yes or no without for that question, do you want a household curbside organic waste collection? My first environmental little hat went on, yeah, of course we do, but it wasn't a simple yes or no because there are consequences of both answers.
Yes.
As you can see the perceived consequences discussed in the Ministry Environment Impact Statement of improving household and business recycling. I looked at my answer from the ground roots population-based perspective, as well as the consequences and aims of reducing organic food waste. On reading that national report, I noted that some good indicators were shown based on population numbers towards community initiatives. Just got to find my other bit here. Our region has a history of being environmentally greener here in the Coromandel. And if you compare our area to other councils' implementation of food waste disposal, it just shouldn't be about economics and financial feasibility and what have you. I looked at our population numbers. We've got 33,000. June 2021, that's 12,471 households. The median income is 24,900. Having to pay for curbside collection as a mandatory will be significant for a lot of families. In Colville, the median income is 23,000. There's 1,296 in that ward, people in households in that ward. Mercury Bay has a median income of 26,300. So we have these 5 wards, and the median income can run anything from 23,000 to 26,300. Paying for curbside mandatory collection for everybody would have significant impact on these households. Where are we here? I understand the strategies that need to be put in place. There is an emission reduction plan targeted by the Ministry for the Education, and that has got 13 years to go, that they want to reduce biogenic methane waste by 40%. The waste strategy targets are 8 years to go. My idea is that more towards, from what I'm reading, is that we should ban the landfilling of biodegradable food scraps pretty quickly, you know, and that, where am I here? And I think that the Thames Coromandel District Council should be more proactive into the community drop-off centres. They could put more, if you look at what else the Ministry of the Environment claimed, they said that community drop-off centres are more achievable on population bases of 1,000 people. Now, if you compare our community to places that are already doing this, like Tauranga, that's the city. You know, it's a huge population base. Yeah, they made it mandatory, the funding, you know, it was pretty big. We've got lots and lots, we've got 5 wards and lots of little villages and towns that the population bases are, you know, small. You know, it is achievable, the Ministry of Environment says in their report, for population bases of 1,000 people and under to have localised community drop-off centres if it's promoted properly by the council. If the council provide good education, like we heard some good education suggestions by the teacher previously, forgot her name because I was trying to write down some stuff. And there's, you know, composting systems. Yeah, people, you know, it's been said you've got to be passionate to compost. You know, the other reason why people don't compost, because there's a lack of education. We can't say that everybody has that knowledge to eat the right food, to do the right thing, until you give them that knowledge. They often just need that push or some community linkages locally that they, you know, learn by and get supported by. You know, if everybody in a population of 1,000 or under has a reserve or a community centre or a garden centre that their drop-offs can be done to, that you know, why should it should be free? Why would we pay our rates and then have to pay for more?
Right. Okay, close to time.
Yep, that is it. That is my time.
Sandra, have you got a question?
I do. Look, Karen, that was very interesting, and you do understand the community pretty well. So my question to you is this: how does that work when 50% of your population is absentee?
Well, I looked at the submissions about that. A lot of people wrote submissions in the report that was given, that I looked at for the council, and they want to pay, you know, so maybe there's a system that it's dropped off at a garden or a gardening centre. They could set up a special places, and they should get incentives for people that can do that. You know, there's community places that need to be explored, like garden centres, supply centres, that, you know, instead of paying some extra thing in your rubbish dump collecting system, there's already places that this can be achieved. It just needs the community to activate, or yeah, it could be a business thing for absentees. But like I said, on those submissions, a lot of them said $50 to $100 that they'd spend, and I went, Jesus. I know a lot of families from going around the area that could not, if that was made mandatory, they couldn't afford that. They could not afford a $50 or $100 increase in having to pay. But a garden centre or a supply centre could be a drop-off point. Community garden.
That's if they're open at the hours that suit people that are coming and going from the
Can we keep to questions?
Oh, sorry. So therefore, when you say there are a lot of submissions to that point, how many would you suggest?
I'm not, because I never rated them, but if you have a look through that document, you can see a lot of the comments were that they didn't live there, you know, that there would be, you know, they weren't interested, or they were interested in being able to have it collected, or but the way the question was asked of the submission was, are you yes or no in favour of a curbside collection thing? Like, that didn't look at, well, you're interested in a drop-off centre or a community garden drop-off centre, some other way of disposing of your rubbish as put into the Ministry of the Environment. They put in all those ideas.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you so much, Karen, for your time.
Thank you.
And your energy.
Thank you.
Now, Beverly had a later time slot, and I know that you're going to speak for Ian Coatsworth. Okay, did you know that?
Yes, I don't think that's necessary.
Right, okay, so that's cool. So what we'll do is we'll move to Beverly. Beverly?
Hello.
Hello, Beverly.
Good morning. Is that Sally?
Yes.
Good morning, and good morning, councillors.
Hello.
Okay. Thank you. Now, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're very clear.
Thank you. I was just listening to Karen Donald, and she has some very good points, and has, you know, in terms of the research she's done on the population, etc. I would like to suggest that I'm for the curbside recycling. We are for the curbside recycling. We live at Kopu. We compost everything possible. We dig chicken bones and dead mice and things into the ground. But we are still very pro the curbside collection, knowing what the survey was and how much waste, food waste, household food waste goes into the collections at the moment. If we address the Tirahia situation, the 2 years, and I believe I understand that it's going to be what's it called, Hampton Downs, where the waste would have to be taken in 2 years' time. That's a significant cost, you know, overload of trucks of unnecessary rubbish. In terms of people are already apparently spending, if we did a calculation, up to $250 a year on blue bags. If people had a drop-off centre, I'm just referring to some of the things that have been previously mentioned, many people don't have cars or can't put the petrol in the cars now to run down to a drop-off centre with your compost. We have a lady who brings her compost to us because she does a lot of work with the church, for instance, and meals. She brings it here. If it was not convenient for her to bring her waste down here, she has it sitting around stinking for extra days. So just looking at the, is that reverberation, or is that something else happening? Sorry, it must be reverberation for me. So if people couldn't get to a drop-off centre, that's going to create a problem, and they'll just stick it in the rubbish anyhow, and it'll go out with the waste. Education is one of the things. If people do have the opportunity to recycle their household food waste into a special bin on the side of the road to be collected, it will show people just how much they're putting into the waste system. Whereas if it all goes into general rubbish collection, it's mixed up with their plastic wrappers and whatever else can't be recycled. And so it needs to be part of an education program, the whole thing. So it's a really, really big picture thing. The other thing is, I want to ask, has the council, have any part of the council that's involved with this, done a costing situation on how much this might cost if the whole of the Coromandel agrees to, if the whole of the Coromandel is included in a roadside waste collection of food waste? Has there been any costing done for what this could be? I ask whoever wants to answer that question.
This is a submissions process, so however awkward, I'm not going to ask that question, but the staff in the room that will be contributing to the report, and so they have noted that question, and
Yes.
we can pick that up at deliberations time. So you have been heard, Bev. It's just that we won't be answering that today, okay?
That's quite all right. Yes, thank you. It's just that's one of the things that everybody puts their thoughts and feelings and ideas forward and their research forward. But if people are spending blue bag money, I know we do, but we only put a blue bag out about once every 3 weeks because we separate our bottles and our tins and everything else. Families, there's only 2 of us in this household. If families are putting $250 or $200 a year into blue bags, and people have suggested $50 to $100 paying the council for collection, and that would only be people who feel they can afford it, that indicates to me that people are prepared to pay something. And then you talk about, somebody mentioned, up north of Coromandel, there are people who don't have much income. They are probably the people who are possibly in a situation to compost. Addressing the whole of the 50% that Sandra mentioned, holiday houses. When you're on holiday and you're only down here for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, are you going to compost your waste? No, you want to get rid of it because you want to have a jolly good time on holiday, I guess. And a lot of the people who are coming down to holiday batches, there's an attitude with people who can just buy stuff and ditch stuff. So they are just going to ditch it in the bags on the side of the road. And then there are the renters. How many rented houses are there in the Coromandel Peninsula? Those renting people probably don't have permission to dig up great tranches of soil and compost all their waste stuff. They could have a waste bin, but that probably requires a little bit of permission from landlords, so that's another issue. I think I've probably said enough.
Thank you very much, Beverly. Any questions?
Questions from me or from the councillors?
No, from councillors, sorry, I was asking.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you so much, and I know how hard you work on all of this, so thank you.
Thank you, Will. I'm also part of the food waste group, have been, supporting that and collecting submissions, collecting signatures and things. So I'm putting this separately as myself, as our household and our wider family household. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right. Okay. So we have 2 more people that are scheduled for 11, Caitlin and Clive. So what we'll do is we'll have morning tea now. Fantastic. And then once Caitlin, and are they presenting in person or on Teams?
Through the chair, Clive is coming in person. Caitlin is presenting in Teams from Australia. So
right. So her time, so,
Sure.
let's, release this, sitting at 11, and we'll rethink. So, Mayor Sandra, we're reconvening at 11, so I think in terms of people getting on with things, even if, Clive arrives a bit early, we'll give him a cup of tea and we'll start again at 11.
Yeah.
So that it's clear for people. Thank you.
Sounds like a plan.